Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing another C++ tutorial. This time we're going to be going over commenting, we're going to be going over variables, and then we're also going to be going over the cout function as well, which is how you output to the console. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So you might remember this piece of code from last time. This was our hello world function. I did add some comments here already, but we're going to go over exactly what these things are right now. Within our actual hello world function, which you can see here, I added these double slashes, right? This double slash here, and you can tell just within this IDE, within Visual Studios, that it's now green text. What that really means here is that this is not a piece of code that's going to be run. It's not actually part of the program. It's simply something that has been added for me or you to be able to read what's going on in the function in the event that something in the code is a little bit more complicated, or if you just want to have a record of what's going on, say 10 years later when you're looking back on an old piece of code. It is a necessary tool for you because, well, if you're actually working within programming or any type of tech-related industry that requires you to write some type of code, you're likely not going to be the only one reading that piece of code. So what that means is you need to make sure that your work is readable for someone else. And one of the ways that that can be done is by adding comments throughout your code. So to begin with, let's go over the comments that I added within the actual code here. Since this is a very basic piece of code, there isn't a lot to really, get into the nitty-gritty on, but there are two different spots that I chose. The first is the using namespace std line. So what I wrote here was just an explanation of what this line does. Let's say you're actually working in industry, you wouldn't do this just because you would expect anyone at that point to know what that means. But for demonstration purposes, and also say you're in an intro course, or say you're trying to explain a very basic piece of code like this one, the hello world function, you might need notes for yourself to explain what you're talking about, which is also a very important skill when discussing the things that you've done. But also, you might need it, say, in a week, right? Say you don't remember exactly what you did and you see this hello world function again and you're like, I don't recall what these things mean, what these things do, etc. What this does is give you a reference point for you to jog your own memory, but also to help you explain what you're doing to other people. Whatever you write on this line after those two slashes is going to be part of the comment. The drawback here with these one-line comments is, say you press enter, well, that's no longer part of the comment. It's considered part of the code now, and well, that's not up to the C++ rules of what you're supposed to be able to be writing. Essentially, what this will do is confuse your compiler because this isn't up to the standards for C++, and that's going to throw an error. You're not going to actually be able to compile your code, and then you're not going to be able to run it either. So how do we get around this? Well, the simplest way to do it would be to add another two slashes. You're good to go. But what if you have to do that like 4 or 5 different times? Well, there's another type of comment here called a multi-line comment, which you can see above my hashtag include line. And what that is for is when you have a big chunk of text that you want to add here for some type of explanation. And it allows you a bit more freedom there because now it's anything between the /* that is going to be part of that comment, and you can have as many lines as you want so long as it's between the /* and //. Just for the record here, you don't have to have these extra stars here. I think that's just something that Visual Studio has added for maybe readability, maybe just formatting, stuff like that. So that's not necessary. It's just there for to make things a little bit easier to see, I guess. Now that we've gone over how these comments work, what they're for, etc., what we can do now is move forward past this hello world piece of code and think about how we can actually create a variable. As a reminder of what a variable actually is. It's essentially a number that doesn't have a specified value, and in mathematics, it can be used as something that you're solving for, right? So you're solving for something like x. But in this case, it's essentially just a value that we can put any value into, or a name that we can put any value into, rather. So for example, if I created a variable called x and it was a number of some kind, right? It's a number variable. You can put in any number at that point. The rules around that will change depending on what language you are in. So sometimes you have to specify what type of variable it is, and sometimes you don't. Now in C++, you do have to specify the type of variable that you're using. So that's what we're going to do today. So to begin with, let's create an integer. So the way that this is done is by using the keyword int x. And what you can do here is just finish the line there with the semicolon, and that's a completely valid piece of code. That's a completely valid line. Now, as you could probably tell, there's no value for x here. So in all honesty, x is not being used. So let's actually give it a purpose now. So what we're going to do now is, instead of just saying you're creating an integer x, which is what this line is doing, we're also going to give it a value. So we're going to just set it to 10. So now this means that x has the value of 10. So what can you do with that? Well, let's say you're trying to do an addition of two numbers. So the way that you would go about doing that, first off, you need another number. So we'd do int y equals 20, right? And now you need to do the addition. So there are a couple of ways that you can do this piece of math. I mean, you can either just do the math and return it to something, so that would be like outputting it somewhere, or you could even say in the future you could return things like your results of whatever you're looking for. In this case, what we're going to be doing is putting it in yet another variable. So this is also going to be an integer. So let's say int answer equals x plus plus y. I might I might misclick a few times. My keyboard doesn't have any keys on it, so don't worry about it. Yes. So now what this means is, when this is evaluated in the code, answer is going to end up having the value of 30. Now, this is very, very specific. This is very useful if you want to always find the addition of 10 and 20. However, that's a very, very niche piece of code that you're only going to use in that one specific situation. So it's better to create a piece of code that can be more versatile. And the way that you can do that is by creating x and y in such a way that those values can be changed. So how would you do that? Well, that is where user input comes into play. So say you have a user on the other end of the program, and they want to tell you what two numbers to add. Now, you might be thinking, hey, doesn't this sound like a calculator? Yeah, it is. It is 100% the basic idea of a calculator. So the way that you're going to go about doing this is by creating a user input for x, a user input for y, and then it's going to return the addition of those two values. So let's figure out how to do that. So there is a function called cin, right? And so cin is what you would use to input any value that you are looking for. There is a catch though. You have to know what variable you're actually inputting a value to. So in order to do that, we are going to need values for x and y to not be set, and then we're going to input those values. To be honest, it doesn't actually matter if x or y are already set, But for the purposes of this program, there's no point in setting them as values and then just immediately deleting them, or immediately changing them rather. So we have int x and int y, and now we're going to input a value. But first, for the user side, I would also suggest adding something to tell the user what they're supposed to do. Because if the user is using the program for the first time, they won't know what's going on. So we're going to add cout, and then just type input x, and then spacebar. And now you can do cin, oh, no mistake, cin, and then x. All right. And now let's repeat the process. You don't have to type this out twice if you don't want to, but I would recommend it just for practice, just to make sure you're writing cin and cout several times, but just change this to a y instead. And now you're good. We're also going to remove this hello world line here, just so it's not getting in the way. And now we're going to run this. Okay, so now you can see it's asking us for the input of x. So let's put in 22. And now for the input of y, and let's say it is 13. Oh wait, we forgot something. We're never outputting the actual result here. So presumably what's going on here is we're taking x and y, we're adding them, and then we're just ending the program. So obviously that means we got to change something around, but it's very simple here. All you got to do is add a cout function. Right, and also for this one, since we are inputting a variable, you just type in the name of the variable instead of writing the quotation marks, because it's not a piece of text that you're just directly outputting. So let's try this one more time. All right, so let's say 22 again and 13. And we get our result of 35, right? You can add some more formatting there to say, change it so that it says x plus y equals 35. And I can go over how to do that right now as well. So you're going to say cout x. Why do I keep hitting m? There we go. Plus y. And as you can see, what I'm doing here is essentially just creating a full line of the different elements that I'm looking for, and that's how we're going to get to our end result here. Okay. And just for some formatting purposes, let's go with that. In Python, it doesn't matter if you use single or double. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't think single quotes count as chars. Let's see, or as a string here. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that was the problem. Okay. Yeah, so just keep in mind different languages have different rules for certain things. But in this case, right, what we're doing here is just creating a format for x plus y equals whatever our answer is. And essentially, since we have x and y also as variables, it's just going to replace x and y with those values. And that's all you really have to worry about there. So we've essentially created an adder function, right? So this function's purpose is to add two numbers, and that's pretty cool. I mean, you can just rerun this program multiple times anytime you need to add two numbers. I mean, obviously for practicality purposes, you're just going to use a calculator, but you get my point, right? The more sophisticated you can create this piece of code, the more sophisticated you can create it, essentially the more utility it will have. And hey, very soon you guys will be able to create your own calculator as well. I mean, it's honestly pretty simple here. The only distinctions from here that I would say that you would need in order to pretty much change this to a full-on calculator, right, would be to learn how to create loops, and then also for string inputs. Those are the only two things that you're missing right now, and those two things are pretty simple to jump over to as well. That is all I have to say for this video. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you found it useful in some way, shape, or form. If you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments. I'm still trying to figure out how to articulate myself in explaining these code snippets. So if you have any suggestions on what I can do better, things like that, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like the video and subscribe for more videos from me on this channel. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. Bye.